changed world. The recent pandemic, COVID-19, has led to very many changes, both in people's daily lives and in their work lives. However, what we intend to show in today's presentation is that the academic research world has also been affected by the pandemic. What we also intend to show is that with this particular changed world, the concept of trust with innovative technologies is pertinent. So to begin with, we want to just show you how in two organizational contexts, the pandemic is affecting research, and then we will have the social aspect coming through. So before we carry on any further, I'd like to invite our first speaker, Carolina Castro Rodríguez, to tell us about her research. So Carolina, what is your research all about?
Thank you, Professor Choudrie. So my research is about understanding and explaining the management of techno-stress in organizations with a focus on techno-use stress, which is the positive stress that we experience when we use information and communication technologies. And the interest and the motivation for this topic arose from the fact that up to now, research has almost completely focused on the dark side of techno-stress because of the negative impact that it can have for our well-being. But we are now realizing that to fully understand techno-stress, we also need to look at its bright side, because there is one bright side. For instance, we experience positive stress when we use tools that we find engaging or thrilling, or that allow us to solve problems more efficiently.
So how has COVID-19 affected your research?
So COVID-19 has affected my research in terms of my research design, for example. I am doing a qualitative study, so I am interviewing participants. And initially, I was going to be interviewing participants based in the UK only, and just at a specific point in time. But during the lockdown, I realized that my research now needed to reflect the changed world that we now live in. So I am now interviewing participants from 4 different countries: Spain, Germany, Ireland, and England, and to capture the experiences of how lockdowns in different societies affected participants' working practices. But also, I am now doing a longitudinal study over a period of 6 months to observe and capture how their feelings and how their behaviors evolve during these unprecedented times.
A very interesting study. Based on your research, what would you predict for the future?
So far, the findings from my research show that participants who worked more productively and were happier during the lockdown are those whose organization invested in innovative tools that made the participants feel engaged, feel thrilled, and feel productive while doing their jobs. So employees really value that. That is showing on my research. But they also value having agile or flexible working practices that allow them to prioritize their workload the way they want and have a better work-life balance. So this makes me think that in the future, more traditional organizations will have to learn to be less resistant to change and step up to the challenge of introducing innovative tools and practices to enhance employees' well-being, job satisfaction, and also their performance.
Well, thank you very much for that interesting study. So in the first study, we've seen how trust is formed within employees, the workforce, and how they can then balance their work and life ways. Now we carry on and we speak to Nadine Goldthorpe. Hi, Nadine.
Hello.
Could you please tell us a bit about your research?
Yes, my research is about how organisations can change working practices by introducing those innovative technologies such as Zoom and Microsoft Teams, which enable people to collaborate by participating in online meetings, sending instant messages to colleagues, and sharing and simultaneously editing presentations or spreadsheets. I'm exploring how some of the human factors that you find in a workplace, such as trust, resistance to change, power, and digital fluency, might impact those changes. Digital fluency, as a broad term, means how adept and confident a person is in their use of digital technologies. It's an important concept as our lives in the 21st century become increasingly dominated by those technologies.
So, based on your research and everything, how did COVID-19 affect your research?
Well, it's supercharged it. Since lockdown, everyone in the organisations I am working with has become familiar with online meetings, which is a fantastic start to improving digital fluency. Another effect of the pandemic is that trust has become a critical factor in my research. Organisations have had to trust their employees to work from home. They've had no other choice during lockdown. One research participant told me, the most extraordinary thing about lockdown is that we have realised that everybody can be trusted. Everybody steps up to the plate.
So, based on your research, what would you offer as a prediction for the future?
Well, despite realising that people can be trusted to work from home productively, the majority of organisations will want employees back in the workplace at least some of the time. If they want to continue using online meetings to connect employees at home and in the office, they'll have to think hard about their open plan offices, where it's actually become hard to concentrate. Offices aren't necessarily the best places to work productively in either.
Well, thank you for that very interesting study, Nadine. Well, we found out that trust is important as a concept between employers and employees. Let's now hear from Chikelue Chike-Obuekwe about his research. Hi, Chike.
Hello.
Could you tell us a bit about your research, please?
So my research involves investigating into the use, adoption, and diffusion of technologies within the older adult community. My research is focused on Hertfordshire. However, it could be a wider research going forward. So the technologies I'm focusing on is applications, which are Facebook and Twitter. So I'm comparing these two applications, given that it's the most adopted application for social communication or social networking. So there is a digital divide gap between the younger population and the older population, which is which is the reason why this research is taking place, and investigating that to see what they use the social network for, what are the factors affecting them, such as trust, privacy, and who is influencing them to use or not to use these applications.
And how has COVID-19 affected your research, Chike?
So looking at the presentation, I've shown how my data distribution and collection is before COVID. So I started with my team and will send out invitation letters targeting households in Hertfordshire that might have residents that are 50 and above. Now, with the invitation letter, we'll have a link to an online survey which I've designed and a phone number to call. The phone number is made available for participants that do not have access to the internet, which is quite important for the research, knowing the number. But because of the COVID, what is happening right now is that I cannot distribute or collect just because of the safety precautions. So I'm having to rely only on Twitter pages and Facebook to send out survey. This does not ensure trust between me and my participants, and there is moderate communication, low outreach, and low return. Unlike when before the pandemic, where I could ensure there is trust between me and my participants as I see them face to face, and they can use word of mouth to spread the research and get other participants involved.
That's really very interesting. Now, what would you offer as a prediction for the future?
Based on what's currently happening with the government issuing that everyone download the app, I feel like there will be a high intake of people older adults particularly, as they are highlighted as the ones that might be vulnerable to this pandemic or COVID-19. As you stated, I think there will be high intake of people using technologies moving forward, and waiting on the official on the document from the official national statistics, the numbers of people adopting and using technology will be at an all-time high compared to other previous years. So that will be my prediction. There will be a lot of intake of people using technology. What it's used for, it's left for for researchers to find out, and that's one of the reasons I'm doing this research. But for the future purposes, there will be a high intake of technologies within all populations.
Well, thank you for that. Another interesting study that showed the role of trust. Now, the panel also will be asking me some questions. So I invite the first panelist, please.
Thank you, Professor Choudrie. So yeah, I'm sure that our viewers would like to know what you are doing research on. So will you tell us a bit more about it?
Thank you. My research is all about the adoption, which is the acceptance, use, and diffusion of innovative new technologies within organizations and society. I have been looking at particularly the role of artificial intelligence now in people's lives. For instance, we have found out the role of chatbots, which people know as Alexa or Google Home, within early stage dementia patients, or the use of Siri in your smartphones within small to medium-sized enterprises. So that has been the kind of research I have been involved in recently.
Thank you.
Thank you. And how has COVID-19 affected your research, Professor?
Thank you. So COVID-19 actually gave me an opportunity to try out something very novel for me. I have been very fortunate to form a new collaboration link with Symbiosis International University in Pune, India, and they are into artificial intelligence. So what we did there is we used machine learning algorithms to identify information related to COVID-19 prevention and cure. And from this information, we wanted to make sure that, well, in artificial intelligence, the issue of bias arises a lot. And so we wanted to eliminate that. So we then had the opportunity to interview older adults, 50 years and above, to ask them whether they could identify the particular information we had as true or false. And so in this study that we did during the pandemic time, well, first of all, we were not allowed any face-to-face interviews. So we used digital platforms like Zoom or Skype. And what we found there is that older people trusted information from old or traditional media. So what I mean there is information coming through from television or radio was trusted much more than the online.
Thank you for that, Professor Jyoti. And moving forward, this will be the final question. We want to ask you, what are your predictions and your expert thoughts for the future in terms of your research?
In terms of my research, what I have found is that particularly now that we've got new innovative technologies such as artificial intelligence and robotics coming through, we have to make sure that the issue of trust and awareness is very, very high within people and organizations. So what I mean there is that now we have recently found out that robots are going within older adults' care homes. If they weren't trusted, then they wouldn't be providing some companionship to the older adults. And so we are finding out that the concept of trust is very important, which is why in today's presentations, I believe that trust has become very important, but it is important in association with innovative new technologies. So thank you for today's presentation.